Well done, good sir. How, though, can the study of heroism guide the young toward the truth? From these and other significant questions of Jack Evans was conceived in his mind the Phoenix Institute. One alumnus noted that after returning from one summer's institute, that the institute itself, he said, provided me a framework from which to evaluate the world. It set me on a purposeful mission of living the spiritual and academic pursuits that can and will and have transformed culture. Ben Sanders, our next presenter, also a product of Jack's influence at, of all places, Arizona State University, once again, will speak about the Phoenix Institute and his friendship with Jack.
It's my privilege to honor my dear friend and mentor, Dr. John X. Evans, Jack, giving particular attention to his leadership in developing the Phoenix Institute over the past 25 years. Dr. Evans, Jack, is very gracious in crediting me as one of the founders of the Phoenix Institute. To be a founder is always nice. You get credit for starting a project without having to do any more work. The beginnings of the Phoenix Institute can be traced back to 1980, with a remarkable convergence of people at Arizona State University. Dr. Robert Lowenberg, professor of history, Dr. George F. Ham, vice president of student affairs, and his right-hand man, Leon Schell, is right with us. And then Dr. Evans, professor of English literature. These three men connected with a number of students concerned about the moral and spiritual climate of the university. There were about 40,000 students on campus then, 60,000 students now. But a relatively small core of students came together to challenge problematic leadership in student government and the student newspaper. Several of these friends are here tonight, 30 years later. Bob Mulhern, Sarah Sanders, Matthew Scully, Jay Heiler, Nick Mickus, Lynn and Tracy Munsell, to name a few. As we were together, this trinity of Doctors Lowenberg, Ham, and Evans gave intellectual and moral support to these leaders. Dr. Lowenberg taught us a profound critique of modern atheism and relativism that we dubbed the Lowenbergian critique. Dr. Ham was an administrative genius who understood the university and the challenges it faced, and he could make things happen. And then Dr. Evans was an outstanding example of a Christian scholar. Then as now, he was a man of grace and intelligence who inspired you to do greater things for the greater good. He always called you to move forward and upward, often with a few thoughtful quotations from Scripture or the great books. So those special years in the early 1980s drew to a close as student leaders graduated, moved on to the real world. Dr. Lowenberg departed for Jerusalem in 1983 to develop the Institute for Advanced Strategic and Political Studies, and Dr. Ham became president of the University of Texas at Tyler. In 1986, Dr. Ham invited Dr. Lowenberg to teach a summer course at UT Tyler, and several of us took the opportunity to travel 1,000 miles to see our old friends in a beautiful campus setting surrounded by lakes and pine trees in East Texas. It was during that summer that it occurred to me that we could have a reunion of the three amigos, Dr. Ham, Lowenberg, and Evans, by developing a summer program called Studies in the Western Tradition. And I remember calling Dr. Evans from Dr. Ham's office to pitch this idea. I think Jack and Rosie were in California at the time. And as I remember it, Jack agreed to the idea. You know, a lot of good ideas have died for lack of a second. And I'm always appreciative of the fact that Jack was willing to say yes to a 20-something-year-old. A local businessman, Bob Buford, gave further support. Now we just needed students to come to Tyler, Texas in the summer of 1987 for courses to be taught by Dr. Wallenberg and Dr. Evans. We brought some students from Arizona. Several are here tonight. Bridget Shelton Beatty, Sherry Judding Toombs, Chris Goggins, others. A few came from Belgium, the Netherlands, and Germany, but our friend Jaime Fernandez won the prize by bringing 20 students from his native Colombia. So we had about 40 students in our first class of Studies in the Western Tradition. Sarah and I brought our then 3-year-old daughter, Rebecca, who was our class mascot. By the way, Rebecca is now 27 years old and a reporter for the Arizona Republic, just to make some of us feel really old. There were challenges that first year, of course. For example, when trying to get everyone together for an event, we always had to specify whether it was American time or Colombian time. Colombian time being 1 hour later. There were other cross-cultural challenges as students from different countries were suddenly living together 4 or more to an apartment near the campus. But after a month, we had become true and fast friends. On our certificate of completion, we used a motto from Eric Zender: perhaps it will turn out that friends are the greatest influence on the course of nations. So we repeated Studies in the Western Tradition the following year, in the summer of 1988, with a similar pattern. Changes in students' lives were often profound. For example, because of Dr. Evans's example, one ASU engineering student, Dan Scoggins, would change his major to English literature. And the rest is history. Unfortunately, there would be only 2 summers of the course in Tyler. Sarah, Rebecca, and I would go on to the University of Chicago when we were not able to continue in our role. But one of the students who was impacted by the first course, Michael von Gazal, launched a summer session in the European country of Liechtenstein in 1989. And that was followed by Jaime Fernandez leading a summer course in Guanajuato, Mexico in 1990. Dr. Gerhard Neumeyer from the University of Notre Dame was a faculty member on that course. He was so impressed that he spoke to the provost at the University of Notre Dame about hosting the program there. So in July 1991, the first Studies in Western Institutions started at the University of Notre Dame with 70 students. And it's run every July since then, averaging about 75 students. That means approximately 1,500 students from 20 nations, including Israelis and Palestinians, as well as students from Europe and the Americas, have attended that program. During that time, Dr. Evans has faithfully taught his course on heroism, touching the lives of all who have taken his class. Jack wanted to especially recognize the leadership of Iran Castillo and John Paul Poppleton. The Phoenix Institute has had positive impact across the pond, too. Jaime Fernandez, assisted by John Curran, ran Phoenix Institute programs at Oxford from 1993 to 1996. And over the past 5 years, the Phoenix Institute program has taken place in Vienna, Austria, under the leadership of Christian von Gazal, president of the Phoenix Institute Europe. Besides the intellectual and spiritual formation provided by the summer institutes, countless friendships have been formed that span the globe. Plus, some 25 marriages can be attributed to this program. In fact, I found out tonight, actually make that 26. So let's see, you can try either eHarmony or the Phoenix Institute. So the motto of the first summer institute may have been prophetic indeed. Perhaps it will turn out that friends are the greatest influence on the course of nations. Thank you, Jack, for your friendship, which has certainly been a great influence on the course of my life and that of so many others. God bless you.